Hello everybody! In this Adobe Lightroom editing tutorial, I'm going to show you how you could take a bland color photo and change it into a dramatic looking black and white image by using the dodge and burn technique. This photo of the Grand Canyon was taken in the late afternoon, so there isn't great sunrise or sunset lighting filling the image with amazing colors. However, I still really like the photo, and since the sun is casting hard shadows along the jagged cliffs, I'm going to use that as an advantage and try to highlight the contrast when editing this image. I'm going to show you my entire workflow from start to finish, so hopefully you can learn how to edit your own photos in a similar style. I have my raw image file open in Lightroom, and I'll begin with the lens correction adjustment section. If that section is not already open, click the arrow and the menu will drop down below the title. Check the box next to Enable Profile Corrections, and Lightroom is able to automatically determine the type of camera and lens that I use to take the picture, and this is because of the information that is stored inside the raw file. But you can manually adjust these options if you are working with a JPEG or another type of photo does not have the camera info saved. From there, I will click over to the Straighten and Crop section because the image is not perfectly level. With this photo, there happens to be a nice horizon line in the distance that can be used as a guide to straighten the photo. I will click on the Angle tool and then click on a spot inside the photo along the left side of the horizon line. Then I'll move the cursor over to the opposite side of the image and click on the top of the horizon line. Once I do that, Lightroom will automatically straighten the photo using that line as a reference. After the photo has been straightened, I can click back over to the Adjustment tab and click on the arrow next to the Basic Adjustments section. This section has tools that will enable global adjustments, and these changes will affect the entire photo, so keep that in mind. I can quickly remove all the color and change the photo to a black and white by clicking the little B and W button. Below that is the option to update the white balance, and I'm going to choose daylight for this image. Just a minor change as you could see in the before and after, but a bunch of little adjustments will add up to a great looking photo at the end. I'm going to bring the exposure down slightly because there was a lot of harsh sun hitting the rocks. Next is contrast, and I'm going to increase it to blacken the shadows more and push the highlights closer to pure white. Moving on to the highlights themselves, I'm going to actually bring these down by a lot for the time being and then build them back up later in the process. As for the shadows, I'm going to increase the slider quite a bit and bring back detail hidden in the dark areas of the shadows of the cliffs and in the gray parts of the stone and rocks throughout the photo. I will be coming back to the shadows later to darken them up individually. When adjusting the whites, I'm going to click on the slider and hold down the Option button, and Lightroom will turn the image completely black, but as I adjust the slider and increase the whites, you will start to see some white sections pop out of the darkness. Those areas are now completely white with no grayscale detail in them whatsoever. So I will stop increasing the whites when I see those areas appear. I will do the same but opposite for the blacks in this photo. As I click the slider and hold down Option, the whole photo turns pure white, but now when I move the slider to the left, you will start to see some black areas appear. I will let more areas in the image turn to pure black because I like my shadows to have a darker look to them, and I'm okay with losing some of the detail. When I toggle this eye, you can see the before and after of all these global adjustments put together. And I think it's quite a difference as compared to just clicking the B and W button and turning the image into a standard black and white. Now, there is a much better grayscale blend throughout the photo with dark blacks to medium grays and pure whites. The image looks a lot better, but global adjustments can only get you so far. And moving on to dodging and burning will allow us to paint with light in different sections of the photo that need individual attention. We're going to do that by creating mask layers and fine-tuning our adjustments. Start by clicking the circle icon and you will see the menu box update with all the options available for masks. I'm going to start with the brush mask and use it to manually paint all over the Grand Canyon, but I won't include any of the sky. Everything that is red is currently part of my selection. Once I have painted over everything, I'm going to scroll down to the effects section and start to increase the texture on the stone and rocks, but it won't modify the sky at all because it's not part of the mask. Next, I will slightly increase the clarity and also bring up the dehaze just a bit, but I don't want to go crazy with any of these sliders because very quickly your image can start to look strange. My first mask is complete, and I like to create numerous masks that each have their own function instead of one mask that tries to do everything. So my second mask will be a linear gradient with a focus on the sky. As I bring the mask down, I want a little crossover into the ground so that I don't have a bright dividing line. Bringing the exposure down makes it much easier to see the clouds, and they no longer blend into the background. They have a more dynamic appearance to them. The next mask will be a radial gradient, and I'm going to adjust the sizing so basically the inner circle is surrounding the edges of the rock formation in the bottom right corner. This is the brightest section of the photo and most likely where the viewer will look first when seeing the image. After I have sized it correctly, I want to click the box next to invert, and now my mask is everything that was outside of the circle. With this image, I want to create layers of different light exposure, with it being brightest in the front and slowly getting darker as you look deeper into the photo. Lowering the exposure on the rock cliffs that are further in the background will help to create a nice feeling of depth to the image. And to take that process even further, I'm going to create another radial gradient and place it along the rock cliffs that are furthest away from where the photo was taken, and I will lower the exposure for that section of the photo. Now I have a nice mixture of gray throughout the image, starting with some bright whites and light grays in the front that blend into some medium gray in the middle and getting even darker in the back. This will create more depth to the image as compared to everything being a similar exposure and looking very flat. For the next mask, it will be another radial gradient, and I'm going to change it to the shape of an egg and center it in the middle of the photo. I will then click invert and swap the selection, and you can see now the red is mostly near the edges of the photo. But I don't want any of the red mask to be in the sky. I could erase that section by hand, but instead I'm going to click subtract and then select sky. Lightroom will then automatically remove all the mask that was located in the sky and just leave the remaining mask down below. From there, I will lower the exposure quite a bit and really darken up the outside of the image. This will help to push the viewer's eye in towards the middle of the photo. Parts of the image are starting to get quite dark, and I want to bring some of the detail back in the midtones and highlights of the image. So for my next mask, I'm going to use a brush and just paint in the middle area of the photo, following the natural curve and shape of the valley. I will then increase the exposure and bring some of the detail back. This will also help to guide the viewer's eye from the rock formation in the front to the valley behind it. And looking at the rock cliffs in the back, I want to bring out the highlights just a little bit more, so I'm going to create another radial mask and bring up this exposure just a little bit. On the left side, some of these rock faces are getting hit by sunlight, but look too dark at the moment. So I'm going to make an oval shaped mask and lay it on the top section and bring up the exposure. While I'm over on this side, I also want to bring back some of the detail in the white part of the rocks along the horizon in the back. Jumping back to the brush tool and to the right side of the photo, this side of the cliff should be darker because it's not getting the direct sun the same way the left side is. So I'm going to lower the exposure and create more depth with this section of the rock. The more that I look at the image, the left side still appears too dark at parts, and I need to highlight some of the sections. With another mask, I'll use the brush tool and just paint on this whole section that sort of curves around the cliff. I'll bring the exposure up, and now it has a much smoother flow of gray while still keeping those bright whites and dark shadows coming down from the cliff. This upper left corner is also still a little too dark, so I'll quickly brush over that area and slightly increase the exposure to get some of the rock detail back. A couple of these rock faces are getting hit directly by the harsh sun. So with the brush mask, I'm going to paint over them and bring that exposure up. This rock section now has a nice highlight side with some good midtones below and dark shadows following behind. Looking down at the part in the middle, I think it should be a little brighter in the path of the sun. So I'll brush on the mask and increase the exposure a bit. And with that, I think the viewer now has a nice path to follow as they look deeper into the canyon. You can see with the before and after, dodging and burning really can change the look of your photo and make it look much more dramatic, even if the original image was a little bland. Thanks for watching, and if you like what you see, please hit subscribe to see more in the future.